Hello, this is Ray Gelato, and this is Gelato's Parlour. And today I'm joined by a very good friend of mine and a wonderful guy, the Soho character and actor, Mr. Michael Warburton. How are you, Michael?
I'm very well, Ray. How are you, mate?
I'm all right. Better than having you on the show. It's nice, always enjoyable. I just want to point out, Michael's played the Kinks manager in the musical Sunny Afternoon, and he also played the drums. So I gather you're, well as being a great actor, you're a drummer too, yeah?
I am a drummer. Yeah, born a drummer, die a drummer. And that was a great gig. You know, sort of. It's a real bucket list thing to do some good acting and play the drums as well, yeah.
Wonderful. We were just talking about Buddy Rich, yeah, as well, one of our favourites.
Yeah,
great. But Michael's also worked with Michael Gambon, Gillian Anderson in All About Eve recently as well. That's your most recent credit as well, wasn't it? What you just did?
Yeah, we did that this year at the Noel Coward Theatre. Gillian Anderson, Lily James, Monica Dolan won an Olivier for her brilliant performance. Working with one of the world's best directors, Ivo van Hove. Yeah, very fortunate. It was a really good production, actually, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. You know what, Michael, the reason we were talking about this earlier, earlier this month, the reason I wanted to get you on, because, you know, being an actor, I wanted to, and we were talking about Scorsese, and we've both seen The Irishman, right?
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do, basically, was have a chat with you about The Irishman from my perspective as a punter, and yours as an actor, you know, because they got all these wonderful. It's a momentous thing. They get all these incredible people like De Niro, Pesci, Pacino, Harvey Keitel, Ray Romano from All About Raymond.
Yeah.
Just in this, in this movie. And what I was really surprised about, first of all, with Pesci getting him out of retirement, you know, it was incredible. Apparently, it took like 10 years or something, didn't it? Do you know anything about what happened with that?
I do know that Scorsese had a hell of a job getting him off the golf course. I mean, he really, you know, and actually not just getting him off the golf course to work in any film, but getting him to play a gangster again, because I think Pesci was quoted as saying something like, something along the lines of, "Oh, not another gangster movie." But, you know, Scorsese turned around to him and said, "No, it's not that sort of movie. It's different."
Yeah, that's that, because you were saying earlier before we started this how he was. You know, I was surprised as well, and you know, delighted to see him playing a quiet character, very quiet, calm character. You know. Yeah.
It's a very, very understated performance. I can't recall any. Can you recall any shouting or screaming that he does in it? I don't
Absolutely
think he
not.
does.
No, well, it's certainly none of the. Do you think I'm funny?
Yeah.
No,
It's not
totally different.
It's not Casino. It's not Raging Bull. You know,
No.
it's not Goodfellas. It's none of that. Very different.
It's totally different, and he was, you know, because we're just focused on him for a minute, but it was lovely to see him, you know, do this kind of role, because he's an incredible actor. But what I was amazed about was sometimes when you're out the game that long, you'd think, well, has he lost his touch? And he hadn't. He was as great as he'd ever been. In fact, greater than a lot of roles I've seen him in before he retired.
Well, we were talking just now, weren't we, about the muscles that, you know, if you haven't written a song or played an instrument or written, I don't know, a script for a while, it takes you a while to get back into it, get moving, get the flow, feel the rhythm. And, you know, he's not worked for a long time, chosen not to, doesn't want to, and he's come back after a massive absence. And he's just slotted in like he never left.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's incredible.
It was. I mean, what I loved about it, just because we saw it around the same. So I saw it last week. Did you see it last week? And I just got back from Philadelphia, so I was quite tired. And what I loved was I was hanging around that Little Italy district in Philadelphia, which is probably to me the most authentic part of Little Italy in America, because it's still real.
Yep.
New York, you know, Mulberry Street, for all I like going there, it's a bit phony now, and but this one, the South Street in Little Italy, the South Street Market, is still part of it. And I actually went to the Villa di Roma restaurant, which is featured in the movie.
Oh my God, what, the one on the corner?
Yeah, no, it's actually on the Market Street itself. But now the one where they go in the movie, because I researched, I think that was the original Villa di Roma.
Okay.
But it was owned by the same people.
Oh my word.
I think it moved sometime in the 60s. But it's the
what
same
is it
thing.
about that Philly Little Italy that keeps it a bit more sort of authentic? How have they done that?
I think the mob might still be there.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, but I suspect that's probably part of the case. And I just think, I mean, it's still.
Have they still got like real family businesses, real family restaurants?
Absolutely. Not as many as there were, but without a shadow of a doubt, yes. Still felt like this Via di Roma. There's Ralph's. there used to be a club called Palumbo's on that thing where Louis Prima and all these people, Buddy Richard, these people all played. You know, Palumbo's was very famous right where I was. But it was just fascinating to see that recreated.
Yeah.
And I'd just been there the week before. They'd recreated that South Street kind of area because Harvey Keitel played Angelo Bruno,
yes,
you know, who was the mob boss.
Yeah,
but he only had a tiny role, didn't he, Keitel, sorry. Not
he
Keitel.
did. Yeah,
he didn't do much. I'd like to have seen a bit more of him, you know.
It would have been nice. And you can't even say there wasn't a time because it's 3.5 hours long. It's a long movie. But I think they were trying to stay faithful to the book. But we'll get onto the book later because it's an interesting area, that. I think coming back to the Italy in Philly thing, it sounds like it hasn't been Disneyfied. It sounds like it hasn't been set up for the tourists, and it's still a genuine, authentic, functioning area and part of the Italian community there.
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. And to top it all, you know, well, we're just digressing a tiny bit, but it does tie in with the movie. I've got a very good friend of mine that grew up around there. He's about my age, a guy called JT, and he said to me, he's a very peaceful, lovely guy, he's a singer, and he said to me, look, Ray, I could have gone towards what a lot of my family did, was go towards that more, I've got to say mob kind of thing. And he goes, I didn't. You know, I'd never had it in me. He goes, you've got to have it in you, or you haven't. And that was it, you know. And it was nice to know when he said that. But he knows, he's a historian of that area. He pointed to this place because that used to be a wallpaper shop that was a front for the mob. And all these things I
But that's
find
one of
really
the interesting things about
yeah.
the Godfather. We see Michael transition from being a civvy. He was in the army. We see him turn up at the wedding of his brother Sonny. And you know, he's there as a civilian, and you know, this is his family, but he wants nothing. And we see him morph slowly over time through the movie. It's one of the great journeys, I think, in movie history.
Absolutely. That, when I first saw it, and even when I see it now, that like you say, that transition where he becomes almost like a cold-blooded killer, so cold, but still, you know, some kind of heart as a family man. It's actually quite terrifying when you see that, because he's geeky at first. He's
there. He turns up in his uniform at the party, and he's there with Diane Keaton. He's there with his sort of white Protestant Catholic, whatever, you know, girlfriend. You know, not Italian.
Yes.
You know, not of that heritage, lineage, world at all, culture at all.
Yeah.
And it's a statement. You know, and he's there. We see him, you know, on the outskirts. He's on the outskirts of the party. He doesn't want to get involved in the central area where they're dancing and having fun. He doesn't want to be the star. And people are coming up to him, and he's kind of very sort of, you know, I'm here, but I'm not here. I kind of have to be here. And to see him move from that, right, it's incredible.
Yeah, that's how great his acting is, because he could do that convincingly. But you know, I wanted to speak to you while we're on the subject. Why don't we talk about his performance as Hoffa? What did you make of that? Because I thought it was the best thing he's done in years. To me, he captivated. They were all great, but he mesmerised me in that movie. I couldn't keep my eyes off what he was doing. He was incredible.
What was it? I mean, as a matter of interest to me, what was it? Were there any sort of specific things that kind of like got you really into him, and sort of like, how do you look at him and not take your eyes off him? Was there anything in particular?
I just think generally, because I'll tell you what it was that I find, like all of them in a way in that movie, or most of them, for the last 20 years, a lot, and I don't mean to put anyone down, but they've just phoned the roles in a lot of the time. And Pacino's done some shocking things as well.
So has De Niro. They've been phoning it in
exactly.
on many occasions.
And Pesci as well before. You know, Pacino I just knew in the end as a caricature. They're shouting. But this, he was completely and utterly, he didn't do that.
But you know what the common denominating factor in all of this, in terms of The Irishman, is? It's Scorsese.
Yeah.
He won't have and doesn't want any of those performances. They know when you're an actor and you're working with a really great director, and I've worked with some great directors, but I've never had the privilege so far of working with someone like Scorsese. And it's the same, I would imagine, when you're a musician and you're playing with other top musicians or a top musician. If you'd ever got to play with any of your idols, you up your game.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You just do.
Yeah, either that or you shrink up and die with nerves.
Absolutely. You know?
I
mean, I won't mention who my team is, but you know, I've heard talk over the past few days that the very young, talented kids we've got in our team, one of the things they're missing are experienced colleagues of an age who are older for them to look up to and grow from and improve from. And the thing, you know, with Scorsese, that all the boys knew they cannot phone it in. Nothing gets phoned in, and you are on edge, and you want to do your best for him. It's like a good director or a band leader becomes like a father, and you want to impress them. You want their love, you want their approbation, and that's what they're all doing.
It's a really good point. But what was your thoughts on him as Jimmy Hoffa? How do you think he played that?
Do you know
that
what?
character?
One of the things I'm most impressed by. was with all of them, but actually I think most of all with Pacino was that even though, and as you know, I put a tweet up about this a couple of days ago about the fact that Pacino, De Niro, Scorsese, Pesci and Keitel, their combined age is 388 years old. And Pacino is now, let me get this right, I think Pacino is 79. Now, they all had to play down to 30s, 40s, 50 years old, which is a big ask. And it's out of all those boys, Scorsese not included because he's not in front of the camera, out of all of them, Pacino is the one in real everyday life, when you see him now, as a septuagenarian, he's an old guy, he's the one that seems to have just a little bit of the old man stoop just starting in. Why not? For God's sake, at that age, why wouldn't you? Of course. But in the movie, there's none of that.
No, not at all.
As much as his vocal performance, his general acting skills, he gives one of the best performances he's given for decades. His physical performance is incredible.
That's an interesting point, because with the what do they call the computer thing? Is it CGI? I don't know what they call it. Is it CGI? We'll get on to that in a minute. But with the CGI, I didn't notice that at all, but I noticed that with De Niro, because he is again getting that. And I was going to bring this in later, but because again, it's no point in doing it in chronological of the film. We'll just bullshit about the movie.
Yeah.
What I found when De Niro kicked the hell out of the grocer, and his face looked like the De Niro we remember in, say, Casino or Goodfellas, in his 40s. Face was with the CGI, but the body was, the movements were like.
A lot of people have quoted that specific scene when he goes to the corner shop and beats up the shop owner that's been rude to his daughter. A lot of people have quoted that scene, and I guess I do get it. But actually, I was talking with a screenwriter friend the other day, and my retort to that is that, at that stage, and I'm guesstimating here, his character is probably late 30s, early 40s. But even if you say mid 30s, when you're a big guy, and De Niro is a big guy, and the man he's portraying was a big guy, like tall, big, wide, stocky, you don't move that swiftly. You're not exactly Bruce Lee, when you're that age
you're
anyway.
right. You're not going to be lithe, are you? As a kind. No, because he's probably never. But it was just a minor kind of point about that. But I found that there was times I looked at that CGI and thought, it's not 100% convincing, and it can't be. But there was other times. But in other words, most of the movie, to me, I loved the way it was done, and I loved the way that it could, rather without makeup, that they could do this sort of thing of them going from young to very, very old. And I thought that was incredible, really. How did you think it worked, that CGI, as an actor,
Well, two things on that. Firstly, reading up on pre-production, so when they were trying to put the film together, and it took a long time for the film to come together. I mean, I think it took the best part of 15 plus years for this to arrive, to get them all in the same place at the same time. I mean, from the moment De Niro and Scorsese met the author of the book, oh God, what was it called? I Heard You Paint Houses, yeah. That was something like 2004, 2005. They all got together and met, and Scorsese made 3 films between now and The Irishman because they just couldn't get it working. But the key factor, I think it was a couple of years ago, that had Scorsese go, we can do this film now, and the way I want to, is when they finally met someone from Industrial Light and Magic, who were like the CGI guys, sort of George Lucas's old company, and the guys there showed them what they could do with the de-aging process. And it was at that moment that Scorsese went, right, I've got all the guys on board, they're all signed up and ready to go, peripheral casting's still got to do, but if I can't get the de-aging process right, because these guys, my boys, are going to play these characters in their 30s, 40s, 50s, if I can't get that right, this don't happen. And from the moment he saw that they could do it for him, bang, we're off.
That's extremely interesting, because I've read, if I like a movie, right, I'll go and read reviews, I'll go on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever or Empire or whoever, Guardian, whatever it is. And a couple of people were very unkind about the CGI. One big, and they said, De Niro, you have this old man's eyes looking for the face. That was bollocks. It was bollocks. And plus, right, say they wanted to de-age them with makeup, like you see, that's worse.
Of course it is.
You've seen it, especially when somebody gets older and it just looks wrong. So,
but Scorsese knew that. That's why the CGI from Industrial Light and Magic had to work. If it didn't work, this wouldn't work. Now, my take is interesting, and a screenwriter buddy of mine agreed with this a couple of days ago. We were very much of the same opinion, which is that the first few minutes that you see De Niro on screen, you do start, you're having a sort of little double take on what's going on with his face. And because he in terms of screen time, he absolutely dominates the movie. We see more of him than anyone else We see more of him than anyone else in the first place. And so for the first 2 or 3 minutes, I was looking at his face going, what's going on there? And I think I'd have done that had I not known about the de-aging anyway. But first 2 or 3 minutes, I'm looking at it. But you know what? Very quickly, and I mean very quickly, I discarded it and went, doesn't matter. It's good enough. I'm buying it. He's good enough.
That's what I thought.
And I'm in with the story anyway.
And because it was good enough, and they were so mesmerising their performance, you forgot about it in the end. I actually thought, though, again, because it's good to be a little bit critical as well. I don't right to be critical about it, but you've got to have our own opinions. I thought the CGI worked slightly worse. This was just, in my eyes, on Pacino. I don't know why. I just felt with the face. It took me a little bit longer to get used to that. With him being a lot, because he looked a lot. He had that virtually the whole time. Because when Jimmy Hoffa died, he was only in his 40s, wasn't he? Am I right in saying that? 50 maybe. He wasn't an old man.
No. That's interesting, actually. De Niro was the only one where my eyes were slightly sort of, for those first 2 or 3 minutes, where my eyes were slightly having to adapt and adjust. Everyone else I bought into. But, you know, it's very easy to criticise, and I think fundamentally it worked. And I tell you what, compared to the notion of having casting younger actors to play younger versions, no. You got it,
because you had, that was the thing. And what I love about, I'm just going to go back on your thing about the combined age and how old these guys are. They're old men. They're elderly men. We don't think of them as old men, but they are. And certain people, maybe when they get older, you know, the creativity is a bit harder to muster up. But it happened with these. They've still got that talent in their bodies, and that's what I found heartening about that film. You know what I mean? It was just so heartening about that. You know, and like you say, there wasn't a huge amount of younger people in it, and it didn't need it.
Didn't need it. Actually, this is one of the big things that I wanted to chat with you about. You know, everyone goes, or most people seem to go, so The Irishman, fantastic, Scorsese delivers again. But of course he would, he's Scorsese. Why should any director, why should every film be good? And how is it that, you know, at the age of 76, I mean, you know, I would settle for just making it to 76 alive, let alone still having the hunger, drive, desire to be, you know, as a creative, as an artist, to be that good. So I don't think this whole thing about, look, it's Scorsese, of course it should be good. Why should it? I think we need to be saying, you know, this is extraordinary that these guys with a combined age of 388 years old are still making work of this quality and this calibre, that they still have the drive and desire to do that, but also the capacity to pull it off. This is incredible.
Do you think, you know, on that subject, this was a last hurrah for them, last hurrah in a way for them, or not?
I'm really pleased you asked me that, because you know what? I remember when they had the premiere, the London premiere in Leicester Square, around the corner from where we are now in Soho. And by the way, had I known it was going on that night, I'm such a cinephile, I'm such a sado, I'd have gone down there just to see them. Now, Pesci wasn't there. One of the things I adore about Pesci, and a lot of people adore, is the fact that he couldn't give a you-know-what about the game. No. He doesn't care about the game. He's not a player, he doesn't want a game, he's not a gamer, I don't care. And I love that about him. Now, you could also argue he's in a position to be that way, get money, success, yada yada. But you know what? Money, power, fame, celebrity corrupts, we know that. And it's never corrupted him. So he wasn't there at the London premiere, which I kind of loved. But when I saw the photos of the guys, the rest of them, Keitel, you know, Pacino, De Niro and Pacino, I was genuinely, and this will make me sound either slightly odd or really kind of sad, but I was genuinely moved seeing the photos of these guys all together, because I looked at it and I went, these guys, I mean, firstly, Pacino's never worked with Scorsese in his entire career. Since the 70s, Scorsese has tried to work with Pacino, it's never come off. Can you believe sometimes in the 70s when they had film projects they were going to do together, they couldn't get the funding? Can you believe? But I saw this collection of guys in Leicester Square at the premiere, and I was moved. Because this ain't going to happen again. And this was one of the things, by the way, that Scorsese sold the movie to Pesci on. This is like a last hurrah, bruv. We ain't going to be able to do this again. Not all of us together. Us lot, this gang.
Amazing. And it's not odd to me when you say that, because it is moving, because the reason it is moving, because once these people go, they ain't going to be replaced. They are, like great musicians, tied in one-offs.
Originals.
Every bloody one of them. Complete one-offs. But just while we were saying about, so we've done kind of, we can go back to Pesci and Pacino, but De Niro, his performance, what was your
well, tell me what again, you thought. What do you think?
I thought it was incredible. I thought it was vintage Robert De Niro in the best way, on par with Casino and Goodfellas and Mean Streets, all the great. I thought it was one of his greats, and it's easy to say that. No, I really did. He was heartfelt. You liked him, whereas maybe you shouldn't like him because he was a killer. You liked him, and I also felt that it was, again, with him, he's been someone that's phoned things in for so many years. You know, there's been Dirty Grandpa. My kids watch that Dirty Grandpa. Come on, Michael. Why? I just felt, why you're such.
I've never even heard of it.
He's terrible, and he's been gurning. You know, the cliche. There was none of that in this movie. He got away from all the licks, the cliches, the licks, the parody of De Niro, the self-parody that I think he almost became. And that was, to me, wonderful to see. So I thought his performance was incredible. And when he was the old man in the home at the end as well, I thought it was wonderful. I just thought it was a triumph, you know.
I totally agree. I think he's been phoning it in for years. Again, the thing is, you've got to remember, you've got to put things in context. When you have achieved the degree of success, adulation, both, you know, artistically, critically, financially, and in terms, not that it would be interesting to any of them, celebrity, but when you've achieved what they have achieved, why keep going? Where is the I don't know, incentive to be greater, to do more great work? This is why these guys are amazing with The Irishman. And he didn't phone it in. Do you know what? From the first sort of couple of minutes, I had two things going on. One, I was going, all right, there's the de-aging. Am I okay with that? Am I okay with that? And then that quickly left, as we just said. But the other thing initially with De Niro's performance I was looking at was, hello, is he phoning this in? Is he just going to kind of coast?
Yeah.
You know, what's going on? And actually, I think it's incredibly brave, because he must have known, because he's such a brilliant artist, he must have known the sort of journey he was going to go on through the film. So instead of at the beginning of the film letting the audience know, you know, straight away, I'm here, I'm back, I ain't phoning this one in, guys, this is me in the character, present, this is me back in the days of Mean Streets and, you know, Taxi Driver, I am back, this is work I believe in, you know, the director I most believe in, and he didn't do any of that. He was staying with the character, and his journey throughout the piece was subtle, authentic and subtle. It was beautiful.
The whole movie was like that, though.
Yeah.
You know, if we compare that to Goodfellas, that's one of my favourite movies, Goodfellas, and I've watched it, you know, hundreds of times, and the same as The Godfather and Casino and all this. Well, The Godfather wasn't Scorsese, but it's along that lines of that Italian-American,
the genre,
the genre. But I kind of just found this was a slower paced film, a more gentle film in a way, although the undertones were just as sinister, you know, with the Hoffa thing and the amount, when they kept putting the different people on that were connected to Hoffa, found with 10 bullets.
Yeah, I love those.
You know,
they were great.
It all happened.
Yeah.
It all happened. So I kind of felt that it was a slower pace, but I didn't get bored at all. Although I did think, just this personal opinion, I felt maybe half hour could have been lost out in the middle. I think there was a little bit of meandering going on. That might have just been me. I may have been tired when I saw it because I just got back from the States. But I did feel possibly half hour, 20 minutes could have been lost out of that film. That was just one of my...
That's typical Gelato, because... no, I tell you why, because a very, very, very talented screenwriter friend of mine a couple of days ago who saw it around the same time as you did, and like you, we're kind of cinephiles and we love it and we drill down and we sort of wax lyrical about it, probably again in a very sad way. He said exactly the same thing. He loves it too, by the way. You know, he's like me, like you, no doubt, his concentration didn't wane for a second.
No.
3.5 hours, which is incredible. But even he said, you know what? They could have taken 20 to 30 minutes off. Exactly the same figure. But he then said the same thing as you, Ray. I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah. Because it was what it was. No, it was. So, you know what? And we've been the main characters. What about the supporting? I was amazed to see, and you told me before I saw it that Ray Romano was in it, because my wife and I and family years ago, we loved Everybody Loves Raymond. I thought it was hilarious. I was amazed to see him turn up as a mafia guy. Ray Romano.
I was surprised and kind of not surprised, because like you, it's something we spoke about a couple of months back. We absolutely love Everybody Loves Raymond. And, you know, as someone in the industry as well, you know, you look at it from various angles. You look at it from production, writing, acting, the whole thing. Excuse me, concept. And I genuinely think Everybody Loves Raymond is one of the great sitcoms of all time. It's not just a little, situation comedy about a family who are in each other's lives.
It's hilarious. The dynamics of the mother and the dad.
But it's clever and smart. It deals with subject matters that most sitcoms don't go near. I mean, it was actually very, very dangerous and very revolutionary and rebellious in many ways. But that's not how it's perceived. It's just perceived as classic American family sitcom entertainment. But he'd never acted before. When he and Phil Rosenthal got together to create Everybody Loves Raymond, he'd just been a stand-up. He'd not been a stand-up that long either, although long enough. But he'd never acted before, and all the other actors in it were staggered by how authentic an actor he was. And there's lots of tales, which I won't go into now, but there were lots of tales during the filming of Everybody Loves Raymond, where his search for authenticity, whether it was the coffee in a cup in the kitchen being hot or whatever, was genuine and real. And he just wanted. And he's actually. My point is this: he's actually like a lot of sitcom, like a lot of stand-ups and comedians. He's a great serious actor. The greater the tragedy and the more chance that they can make a great comic actor, and vice versa.
I thought he was. I mean, he didn't do that. He didn't have that much in this, but I thought he was captivating on the screen.
Wonderful.
I'm just thinking of other supporting people. There was the lady who was Artie Bucco's wife in The Sopranos. Catherine Narducci was one of the wives, wasn't she?
She was.
I was amazed to see her sort of pop up, but it was so I don't know what his last name is. It Bobby Cannavale or Bobby
Cannavale,
yes.
Yeah.
I think this guy's an amazing man. He was Crazy Joe Gallo, wasn't he? In this, the lunatic, and he was brilliant as that as well. He's a real good bad guy, that actor,
Yeah, Felix D'Italia, I think it is. But he is great. Boardwalk Empire was his breakthrough, and he was fab in that. But anything I've seen him in, even stuff like Will and Grace, he was fantastic as Will's boyfriend in it. He's a great actor. But I tell you who also I think is standout in it, Stephen Graham.
Now, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I could carry on because that's the guy I was forgetting about, the English, the Liverpudlian. Yeah. Incredible.
Well, actually, he could even say that he's a Manc.
But, he's a Manc. Oh, sorry. Well, I thought he was one. Excuse me. I'll edit that.
But it occurred to me last week, actually, Ray, who he is. Why I was liking him so much and what's going on with him. He's basically the Mancunian Bob Hoskins.
Yeah.
Because he's gone over there and he's absolutely smashed it, and they love him over there. I've got a couple of mates whose American accents are literally like natives. They just literally, and he's got that look, he's got that feel. He's not overawed by anything, because Bob Hoskins was a real sort of hero of mine as a bloke and as an actor. And he was fearless, and he had humility. Stephen Graham's spoken about his mental health issues. He came close to suicide. His wife saved his life and stuff. So he's a very open, authentic person, and very often that translates into someone as an artist. And we have a scene where they're in a kind of deserted restaurant somewhere in Florida. And Stephen Graham is there with Pacino, he's there with De Niro, can't remember who the fourth person is, but there are four of them. And all these incredible actors, they're not trying to top each other, they're not trying to play games, they're just playing the character, they're doing what any good actor should do, they're telling the story. That's your job, that's your duty. Everything else, ego aside, everything else is extraneous bullshit. That's my sort of clarion call. But Stephen Graham is there with these greats, holding his own. Not trying to top them, not trying to go underneath them. He's just doing his job, but holding his own because he's so talented. And this is a boy from Manchester.
That was the scene where he comes in the Bermuda shorts, doesn't he? He's got a cigar, and Hoffa, Pacino, hates the fact he's disrespectful. But I thought he captured every scene he was in that. Like he did, again, he was Al Capone in Boardwalk.
He was.
Which is one of my favourite things.
Yeah.
And what a role he did on that. But in The Irishman, I thought he was... I'm glad you mentioned him, because again, we're here and we can't think of everything. I thought he was incredible. His American accent's completely convincing. He's got that little smile out the corner of his mouth all the time, but menacing. Plays a very menacing character, and he was really, really incredible.
It's amazing. It's like Hoskins. He's a boy from Manchester. He's a rotund, tubby boy from Manchester. He's no matinee idol, but he's made it over there. As you say, Boardwalk Empire, like Bobby Cannavale, was his breakthrough. As incredible performance as Al Capone, and he's just slotted in there, and he fits.
Yeah, he fits
fits. But he still fits here. It's not like he's sold out. It's the same as Hoskins. You know, Hoskins could straddle the Atlantic, Graham can straddle the Atlantic, and they fit in. They're here
it's
and
just
there.
amazing. Well, just backtrack quickly. Hoskins was one of my heroes as well, and I don't think anybody has ever. We won't go into so much. That's another podcast we can do together. I don't think anybody's ever played a British gangster as well as he did in A Long Good Friday, as Harold Shand.
No.
That was the best gangster portrayal I've ever seen. Even Tom Hardy as the Ronnie and Reggie was good. I didn't think much of the movie, but he was good. But Hoskins, he captured that completely, and nobody, in my opinion, has done it as well as him.
No,
you
I agree.
He's amazing. But what was just going to say? Because we'll wrap up in a little bit. But the dynamic of Stephen Graham and Al Pacino with the Hoffa thing was incredible. The way they were winding each other up constantly.
And like right? You know, as I say, there's such a thin dividing line between tragedy and comedy, or serious drama and comedy, and it bordered on comedic.
It did.
You know.
Yeah.
And that's something, because both of them. I think you mentioned it earlier.
Couldn't be in the same room.
They couldn't be in the same room. But both actors have got like a little glint in their eye, or a little glint at the corner of their mouth, if that can even be done. Do you know what I mean? There's something about them. You know, as characters, they're gaming.
Absolutely.
It was beautiful scene.
Completely talented. But what I wanted to just when we can close off, because we've covered quite a lot of the Irishman, and it's been wonderful to have you speaking about it from an actor's perspective. But the last thing I'm going to say is, right, I looked into Hoffa a little bit. I knew a little bit about him before, but I looked into him. Now, De Niro's character, Frank Sheeran, right, at the end, confesses to the murder of Hoffa. What do you think really happened to Hoffa? Do you think this happened? I mean, have you looked into this? We'll finish on this, because it's an interesting thing.
Okay, all right. So the book that it was based on, Christ, what was it called now?
Painting Houses.
I heard you paint houses, yeah. Now, De Niro's been asked this a few times by journalists, and he's been quoted as saying, look, this is not a documentary, because most people, most criminologists and most journalists who've looked at this, and there's some good articles out there, basically the Irishman, Sheeran's story is a crock of shit. It's bullshit. It's completely made up.
Right.
Even from the fact we see in the movie, I don't know if you remember, but we see the Irishman fly in a small private plane to a small airport, and then when he's on his way to kill Hoffa, and then he gets in a car and they pick him up at the Red Fox Inn, whatever the hell it was. Didn't happen. Can't do that. Basically, to be honest with you, the story is bullshit.
Right.
It's absolute bullshit.
Because I didn't even know until I saw this, Michael, that anybody confessed to Hoffa's to killing Hoffa. Yeah. I always thought it was an unsolved mystery.
It is.
And when I saw that, I walked out thinking, I know what's going on. Then I looked it up on bits online, and it said, so you think it was bullshit?
It's not a question of what I think, because I know sort of screw all about everything. But people who know far more than me, who know far more sort of learned, this is an unsolved crime. This will always be an unsolved crime. And if you think about it, why on earth would you pick up Hoffa at that inn, drive him to a suburban house? I mean, you saw the street it was in. There's lots of houses, and then kill him there. And then, the rumours was he was put in a lorry and
getting the body out. No.
You take him to a quiet place. The rumour is it was a sort of a nearby sausage factory, which kind of makes sense. You take him there, you chop him up, you incinerate him, and the body's just gone like that. Within 2 hours, the body's gone. And a tiny group of 4 or 5 people did for him. They were the people that were tasked with taking him out and sorting him. And we'll never know who they are. So basically, The Irishman is a work of fiction. But who cares?
No.
It's a great movie.
I completely agree. But just regarding Hoffa, and I want to look into it a bit more. Do you think? Well, kind of finally, the mob. Do you think the mob did it? They obviously did.
Of course they did.
Because he wouldn't. In that movie, he wouldn't back down at all. And I kept thinking, God, Hoffa, just back down, retire with the money, like Buffalino's offered you, Pesci's character, Frank Buffalino. Retire with the money and get the hell out of this, right?
Hoffa did what most people who ended up dead at the hands of the mob did. He overplayed his hand.
Yeah.
He wanted to get back control of the Teamsters. That's his whole world. And another thing you'll find, even with some of the big sort of family leaders in the mob, who were sort of wiped out, is that he was about to go in front of a congressional committee. When you are anything to do with the mafia or in the mafia, and you'll see this through history, all the big names. If you go before a congressional committee, you will get taken out before you get there. Yeah. A vast majority, and that's exactly what happened with Hoffa.
Well, maybe he kind of was on a bit of because he was, popular and he's powerful. He's on a power trip himself. When people were on that, he couldn't see the danger. Yeah. And he was warned. But anyway, listen, we'll wrap. We've covered The Irishman. This is me with a wonderful actor, a real lovely friend of mine, Michael Warburton. Michael, thanks for coming on this podcast, and we've had a great time talking about this. It's been fantastic just rapping about this this wonderful movie, and I think it's going to go down as one of the Scorsese classics. Absolutely.
I think Netflix are very lucky to have it in their portfolio, and I would say to people, it's on Netflix from tomorrow. But if you ever see it in repertory at a cinema, and it's still on in a few London cinemas until the sort of middle of December, try and go and see it at the cinema, because this is a film. It's made to be seen in the cinema, not on your laptop or your TV. So if you can.
Yeah, with all the distractions at home. But Michael, thanks for coming on the podcast. This is Ray Gelato with Michael Warburton, and it's been a great pleasure. Thanks very much, mate.
Thank you, Ray.
God bless. Thanks.
Well, don't you want a little pizza?